I will introduce our moderator on the topic, what will it take to make the tech world more diverse? So we're lucky to have Emmanuel Carli, CEO of Epitech. We have Jean Guo, co-founder and CEO of Konexio. We have Ramade, founder and CEO of 15Tech. And our moderator, Jelley, corporate responsibility and sustainability consultant. So please help me welcoming them on stage. And please go forward to have something more interactive.
What will it take? What will it take to make the world of tech more diverse? Mesdames, Messieurs, bonjour, bienvenue et merci de votre participation. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you all. My name is Jelley, and I'm delighted to be with you here today. I'm also delighted to welcome on stage our three speakers. I'm going to introduce them briefly, then I'll tell you a few words about my background, and then actually, I'm going to put you on the spot as well to get your help here. So about this session, well, look, with our three speakers this evening, we're going to find out what they do, a bit about their story. We're going to understand what they're doing today, and we're going to put them on the spot to help us think about what we can all do to help make the world of tech more diverse. So, by way of short introductions, welcome to you all. Sitting immediately to my left is Ramade. Caroline was the managing director of Villa, an incubator for female founders in France. She was also deputy head of digital at the city of Paris. She's a board member of the UN Committee for Women for France. And Caroline is just back from launching 50 in tech in Vivatech just recently in Paris. Caroline, welcome. Please tell us a little bit about this 50.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Thomas. So I'm really delighted to be with you today. So I'm Caroline. And I just become an entrepreneur. I just launched 15Tech. And 15Tech is the fast-track app for women in tech and all those who want to build smart gender equity for tech. So what we want to do is to build the biggest database with female founders and tech profile and connect them to the best of the ecosystem. Could be like corporates, could be incubators, investors. And so we'll have like a lot of features and using matching and sharing. And what we want to do is really to unlock the tech with male. It's a male-dominated industry, and we can do it without them. So that's my new project, and you can see that on 15tech.com.
Caroline, thank you. Jean, welcome. Jean studied economics, human biology at Stanford University. You have a background in research into health economics, in particular with a focus on migrants. You're a Fulbright Fellow. And recently, you have founded and are today the CEO of an organization called Konexio. What are you up to?
Okay, everyone can hear me. So thanks, it's really, I'm happy to be here and to be on this panel thinking about some of the issues that, keep me up at night. So Konexio, we are a digital learning school with a mission to really focus on reaching those who are the most vulnerable and tackling the issue of the digital divide today. What does that mean? In France, that speaks to 15 million people who are digitally excluded. And from a certain perspective, we talk about access to rights today. We know that in France, there's a national policy by 2022 that most government public services, we go from taxes to service platforms such as Pôle emploi, CAF, these are all digitalized. And if people are not able to master these, they don't have access to their rights. So it's a very, very important, mission to make sure that these individuals are included and also have pathways to work towards more professionalized skills today. When we talk about jobs, that's 90% of jobs in Europe require some basic level of digital skills. So we work in France to teach basic training courses that go from the basic building blocks of digital literacy up to more advanced programming courses. And we do so very much in relation with corporate partners as well, who focus and help us, types like Salesforce, SAP, Adecco. We'll have companies like Google and others joining, but really to also focus on not just getting someone to, take on those skills, but afterwards making sure that they know how to speak, they know the social codes, they know how to, present themselves and not be daunted when they, step into, corporate environments and have to kind of battle for themselves.
A very holistic approach. Emmanuel, you have a phenomenal track record in tech, software engineering, strategy, R&D, business development, systems engineering, and today you're the CEO of Epitech, an organization which is present right across France. Epitech, a leading IT school. Welcome.
Yeah, we'll try that mic. No, does it work? It would be great if we have more than one mic. It works? No. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for your introduction. Yeah, almost 20 years in software engineering in different companies, from groups, startups, medium companies, and finally schools. So Epitech, yeah, today we have 20 different sites, 12 in France and remaining one in Europe. We are opening in the US. We started to open in Africa. So Epitech bring project-based learning school in France 20 years ago. We started with 300 students. We are close to 6,000 now. My job is for my students to bring them the best ecosystem to allow them to grow. This is my only obsession. This is the only thing I think about every day and night, because I really think that all the students are different. And my main concern is in education today we don't consider the people that much. For example, in France, we think that because people are good in math, they will be mathematicians, but it's much more complicated than that. I'm interested by all the jobs done by, I forgot his name, around the multiple intelligence. I will find the name later, and we want to give a specific education to the students to bring them to the best level, and to create for them the best ecosystem. We'll start this year to allow students to start 1 year in France, the second year in Germany, and the third in Spain and the US, and like that they can have a great experience and be the best software engineer. I wish.
What a dynamic group of people we have. A few words about my background. I started off my working life as a lawyer, but I've been working in the field of responsible business now for over a decade. I feel I have a very personal interest in this session. And I think it goes something like this. I'm a man, I'm white, and I'm privileged. And I'm absolutely convinced that if sectors, industries, societies are more diverse, more inclusive, more equal, everyone, including white privileged men, everyone is better off. So that's my interest in this conversation about how we help to make the tech world more diverse. Audience, I said I'd put you on the spot. Here we go. Stand up if you think diversity in tech is an issue. Remain standing up if you think it might be even more of an issue than in other sectors. And if you think it's urgent, please take a seat. Okay, so we put some figures around this. Preparing for this session, we looked into some of the data. I refer to a well-referenced Atomico report, venture capital fund. Atomico published reports, diversity, tech, investment. Tail end of last year, it was picked up in the FT, in The Guardian, and here are some of the figures, just headline figures. European tech, 2018. Investors in European tech last year placed 93% of funding in companies with no female founders. Out of a survey of 175 large startups in Europe referenced in the same articles, in the same report, out of 175, one had a female chief technology officer, and 6% had a female CEO. I think this is a really urgent conversation. So over to you. I know you have personal backgrounds in this. I know you didn't wake up on a Monday morning and say, hey, I'm going to champion diversity in tech. So how did you get into it? What was the thing? What was the story? Carli, can you kick us off?
So first it was like more about entrepreneurship, I think, and finally I became like entrepreneur at 40 years old, so it took like a little bit of time. So it was about my grandfather was an entrepreneur, and so he died like suddenly, and my grandmother didn't know how to run a business. It was like supermarket, like 100 supermarket in the south of France, and finally she almost went to jail, and she was like discharged at my birth. And this was my first story about injustice, and because she could be like involved in the business, she had nothing to do every day, so even like spending a lot of money. And I think she was really smart, and she could learn how to run the business. And so that was my first story about entrepreneurship. And when I was really young, and I say always, I want to become a businesswoman. But everything say, oh, you know, you can be a businesswoman, it's like nothing, you know, if you're like just a woman. And I say, okay, I will become a journalist. So I did like law school, and I did a scientific courses, but then curriculum, but then I made like law, like you. It's really cool, but it's like really, really traditional. And then I became a journalist, and then I turned into tech. So why tech? And why? Because you said a number. It's like it's the present, it's the future, and we can be like just not in this area. So I really turned into digital when I work in politics area to be like really. To understand more the citizen, because politics didn't understand nothing, and we don't have KPIs, and so I turned into digital, and then into startup and innovation when I work at the City of Paris, and I realized that we have no female co-founders, 10%, 3% of CEO globally, and just one more data. You know, this Juul, this startup with the cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, receive more funds than all the female co-founders all over the world. So it's like, it's 2.7% of all the venture capital. And when you are black founder, so black woman founder, it's 0.27. So it's like really a huge and big issue. And we have like 10% of more background in the education area in France. So it's not a question of talent or we can do it. It's just a question of this ecosystem is built by men for men, and we can really change that. So it's just a question of action, of master the codes, because it's all about the codes. So it was my story, and I think really we can do it. I'm not coding like people, and I'm building a tech company, and I think we can really do it. So a long story, but finally, yeah, I succeed.
Emmanuel, you have a hardcore tech background. What brought you in to diversity in tech?
So my experience in diversity started 43 years ago, which is my age, because I grew up on a small island called Réunion Island. So for those who doesn't know where it is, you have Africa, on the left Madagascar. If you don't know Madagascar, remember the movie made by Disney, Madagascar. Then on the left you have Mauritius and Réunion Islands. It's 100 kilometers long, not in the middle of Indian Ocean, but quite. And on that island, we all live white, black, yellow. There's no difference between us. We hear the bells from the church, we hear the muezzin, we hear the Tamil. And so my first experience, I spent 21 years there, and I came to France for my studies. And when I arrived at Epitech, my school, I met some younger guys who told me, do you know what is the difference between the human and the beast? No, I don't know. It's the peripheric. And I say to me, wow, what's going on?
Wow.
So it was my first step. I think, okay. And my father, when I left the regional island, told me that you will discover the real world, my son, and it happened. And then, so I was always concerned by the difference between the genders, the colors, because the religion, because I've never experienced that in my life. And where there is respect between people, we can grow all together. Then, so I went to work in the companies for big groups in the defense industry, where we were 98% of white men. And even what was strange when I started to work in Thales, I'm left-handed, and we had more left-handed people than right-handed people. So it was strange. And I started at Epitech in March 2013, and then I came in a school where sexism was a real issue. And it was quite a nightmare for me. So I took lawyers, and I fought inside the school against students, against the people. I fired some guys and say, okay, this will never happen in that school. And in 2014, some students started to work on one association called Emma. It was not DIPT. It was Emma was founded by 2 other students, and we supported them. And from 4 students, we went to 500 students involved in mixity. For me, the point is we need to have the mixity. In fact, I can't be the boss of an innovation school. What I say to my students is, you can't innovate if in the team you don't have people that are like in your real life. So we pushed a lot, and then Dipti took the role of the president of the association. She did a crazy work, working inside Epitech, working on Emma, and she did really, really great stuff. We went from Paris to all the cities in France to Europe. We went from some 100 students. We taught software to 20,000 students this year. So Epitech students are really involved on the mixity, diversity issue, and which is the representation of women in tech. And so we are pushing a lot and keeping pushing a lot on that, because it's a real issue for our activity.
Thank you, man. What a story of encouragement and hope there. Jean, tell us about Konexio.
I think, going back to, I second a lot of things that you guys say in terms of, what you guys have seen, obviously, yep. And I think, there's a lot of nuance when we also talk about, these issues of diversity, because it's not just about, the gender, but it's also maybe where you live, what, ethnic background you come from, all these things. And I think this cumulative adversity, can really compound itself and result in differences where, for us, we kind of face that when we work with companies and we ask them, for you, what, makes it, what makes a CV go into the, second pile of selection. And for them, it's if there's one sliver of doubt about, their language or their degrees, or even having someone say, we're not taking this person because they live on the RERB, I know it's broken, they're not going to make it on time. So reasons like that for having someone being rejected, or thinking that because of my zip code, I'm not going to be able to make it, I think those are huge issues, and that we can't kind of ignore. So I think in one instance, for us, and kind of closer to the mission of Konexio, I think is to make sure that whilst we're talking about, the acceleration, towards new technologies with, software engineering, we want to also make sure some of the most vulnerable people are those that lack these skills, that are in, maybe have not finished their educational professions or have gone to the end of their training, but those in lower qualified positions. So for example, in France, 31% of people that are lower skilled have the necessary digital skills to really advance and to work professionally, compared to 84% of those in higher qualified positions. And so for us, is making sure that do these people have the basic toolkit to make sure that, you know, they are able to work, they're able to engage in their societies in an equal opportunity way. And then kind of on a second note to that, I think is to add, you know, to my own personal experience as someone who is female, younger, you know, I speak with an accent. I also, you know, don't look like a traditional, you know, kind of profile in tech. And the number of meetings where I go to sometimes where people assume I'm the assistant, or they assume, you know, I'm not the CEO who's talking. And so experiencing that for myself on a personal level when I walk into meetings with governments and high level, you know, politicians or corporate partners, it is a challenge for me. And I imagine, you know, for me coming from a background where I have gone to some schools in the US that, you know, can kind of back my pedigree or what you might have it, but imagining for my students who don't have some of those opportunities, didn't finish their school, how do they achieve and, you know, go above these barriers? And so kind of that is a personal motivation for me to work, you know, twice as hard to make sure, you know, the type of situations I see on the ground are not going to be repeated, and it's not going to be, you know, we want the rule to be everyone is included and not the exception.
Thank you. So each one of you has observed a situation which you think hasn't served the best interests. You're doing something about it as change makers. You're taking action, but now we all need to somehow help you to sustain the change. In your journeys, you'll doubtless have come across enablers, things that have helped you to go that little bit further, perhaps that little bit easier, that little bit quicker. I'm sure you've come across many barriers, and you've probably seen the odd surprise or paradox. Could you pick up one of those things, whether it's an enabler, a barrier, a surprise, or paradox, but one of those things that might stick in your mind, which could help enlighten us and could help us to, you know, sidetrack, get around a barrier, or spot an enabler, or maybe come to terms with a paradox that you have faced?
Just perhaps about the unconscious bias of the tech ecosystem. I think it's not like really when an investor, so if you are an investor, for example, just to give you really a concrete result of a research of Dana Kanzer, it's like a PhD from Columbia, and she analyzed the question asked by investors to female entrepreneurs and to male entrepreneurs. And the difference is really big. 63% of the questions asked to female entrepreneurs are prevention-oriented questions. So it means that how will you succeed? How will you conquer the market? How will you succeed? And you don't have like a tech background, so it's like complicated. So, and for a male, it's like promotion-oriented question by like 67%. So it's really question with promotion, really vision about what you will do. It's like really another kind of question. So just for example, it's really important to analyze how we will really speak about female or male, and there's a lot of studies about that. And when you realize that, you can change it, I think. And on the other side, when you are a woman and you don't know the code of the ecosystem, we can give the codes. We can say, okay, there is 90% of male investors, or and here are really the code, and you need to learn how to transform a preventive-oriented question into a promotion-oriented question. On the platform, we'll do that with podcasts, with ask-me-anything session and training with Dana, for example. And I think we can have like really positive action, but we need to analyze the process and to know more about the stereotype and even female investors or have like really unconscious bias too. It's not a question of male or female. It's like the vision of how we see today. So women and women in tech. So I think it's not like so complicated. Just another example. We have a partner. We have a Microsoft for Startup as partner of the platform, and Ian McDonald is the CTO in residence of the Microsoft reactor in London. And he told me we just stopped the pitching process And now we have 35% of female entrepreneurs in the scale-up program. They have just before like 5%. Why? Because he's autistic, and we say introvert, autistic people and women are really discriminated by the pitching process. And it's like super simple. Wow, just stopping the pitching process. Wow, and now you have like 35% of female entrepreneurs. So we will provide this kind of vision, super simple, really actionable. We don't want to build like something complicated. I think it's just a question of thinking more about the process, our vision of we are building the ecosystem and everything, and that's my point of view. A lot of barriers, a lot of unconscious bias, but we can really move on and change things quickly.
These things are now rising to the surface and becoming more visible, more talked about. We're more aware of what's going wrong and what we need to overcome.
Yeah, and we need to share advice to change that.
Thank you.
I think for us, one thing we see is that when we put people face to face and they're in contact with each other, that actually changes, that's transformative. What I guess, for us, what we try and do is, we obviously deliver the training courses ourselves, but we work and co-create partnerships with companies who come in as coaches, as mentors, to really give our students kind of the whole complete package in terms of, how do they speak, how should they present themselves. And what's really interesting is that we find, sometimes, for example, with Salesforce, when we work with them, they'll see that, well, this person on a CV, we never would have taken them because of X, Y, Z reason. But when I see them work, when I see them think, they're fast, they're brilliant. How do I, go beyond what I'm doing in our current engagement and work with them to help them, go further? And I think it's sometimes going beyond just the traditional engagements we have and trying to get people to come in contact face to face, to humanize, in a sense, even though we are in the tech ecosystem, to humanize this and make sure that, we're, at the end of the day, like you're saying, it's about the person at the center of it. And how do we make this much more approachable, even in a context where things are becoming automated and transformed?
From my perspective, the biggest paradox is there are so many opportunities in the tech industry today. I don't understand why we don't have much more women. We've been doing so much those days, those years, last years, without real impact. For example, for Epitech, we went from 95% of men to 94% of men, and for me, it's a nonsense. So I see something I don't understand. I have 2 daughters and one boy. And when I look at my child, I see that, and even when I look at the girls inside Epitech, I think they are much more interesting by what the technology can do and what kind of change or what kind of impact they can have using the technology. And I think today when we are talking about technology, we are talking too much about the technology itself. And I often say, we don't care about it. AI is important, but what are we going to do with it? What are you thinking about it? So we've changed inside the school 4 years ago, and we created some dedicated moment where we ask people to come inside the school and explain what are the pain points, what is our future about, what is the future of transportation, of energy, of health, of education, how can technology improve or impact, and we ask students to provide solution and to think about solution. And I think we need to talk a little bit less of technology for the technology, because we've seen 5 years ago everybody was talking about data, and then we are talking a little bit less about data. Then we talked about IoT, and we are talking a little bit less about IoT. And we talk about AI, and then everybody says, okay, in 2020 we will have autonomous cars, and then brands like Peugeot are saying you will never have autonomous car level 5. And so there is a law, which is Amara's law, which says we are overestimated the impact of technology in short term and underestimating the impact of technology in the long term. And I think now what we need to do is to completely reinvent the way we talk about the digital transformation. AI is important for those who does AI, but it's less important for people who own companies, because we need to saw the technology as a support. And I think it may have an impact, and it may be more interesting. Another thing is you can't imagine the impact of parents. Because parents, those who have child 18 years old, my daughter, the oldest one is 16 years old. So are those who lived the technological change with the first computer, with the PC. We grew, and we lived the moment where the women decreased in the tech industry, and we lived the moment where computers were given to boys, because it was more interesting, or it was technical, I don't know what. And I think we need to push our girls to go to the tech schools. When you talk with Dipti says if her mother was not there, she would not have started Epitech, because the father was not agree with the fact that she would go in the school with 95% of men. And parents, we need to talk to parents, because the girls are missing huge opportunities today in the tech industry. And it's really, really difficult topic, and I don't have the full solution, but I'm working on it every day.
Clearly, we have a huge change agenda here. We have changes around unconscious bias, we have changes around processes, around pitching, we have changes about the way we talk about technology, the shift from what is it to what is it for? Because when we start talking about it at a societal level, which is necessarily diverse, it's a slightly different conversation. Thinking about change and your own background, your own experiences, are there things which, sitting here today, you think you probably should have done differently in your journeys in tech and diversity? Are there lessons that you've learned which, with hindsight, would have maybe got better results, perhaps more quickly?
You want me to start? Yes, what I would do is to talk much more to the parents, because we've done so many things for students, for young girls, young boys, to explain them what is coding. We are at a moment where communication and the startup nation, for me, it's not that good, because people think that everyone will learn to code. This is false. My grandmother will never learn to code. My father and my mother will never learn to code. So it's a job. It's a real job. It takes time. Yeah. So we've done so many stuff for young people. We did nothing for the parents, okay, to explain them what is in front of us, where are we going? Because the parents, which are the people that works in companies, how do they live that? They live that like every CEO of every company are afraid by the data, by the disruption. The disruption, we will disrupt everything with software. We will kill the job with software. And what I've said to the students, it will never happen. Why? Because the day where people doesn't have a job, it will be the real revolution. So your goal is to think about the solution to make the society grow globally. This is, for me, the most important thing. We've had in France the Gilets jaunes strikes for many weeks. For me, it's a kind of beginning of that. We are the privileged people, because when I was younger, when I started my studies, we were developing behind one computer. Now we are developing behind many data centers, meaning I have on my hands one computation power which is just huge. I can do the worst thing I can with it. So we need to teach ethics. We need to make we need to make a student understand that the tool they have in their hand is really, really powerful. If we would have made the nuclear industry like we are making the software industry, we will have had one Chernobyl every day. This is true. So we need to explain that. We need to go back from the communication, which is important for startups, which is everyone needs to go to data. Okay, everyone, when they started to talk about AI, the funds received so many companies, so many documentation of companies about chatbots. Hey,
yep.
Come on, we have to stop that now.
Can I pick up on your parenting point and bring Caroline in at this stage? We were talking earlier with Caroline, background as a lawyer, as a journalist. You're also a parent, and when we were chatting earlier, you were telling me that you felt slightly exposed because you don't have a background in coding, but you're a parent. You're a parent of a daughter, and you're an advocate for diversity for women in tech. So how would you respond to what Emmanuel has been suggesting about the work we need to do around parents and helping them in emancipating their children of all genders, of both genders, into tech?
I have 2 daughters, so every day I'm trying to explain that there is like a lot of opportunity and that they can really have impact through technology, but I can't decide for them. So I bring them at Vivatech with me, and my granddaughter was like, wow, that's so amazing. She saw holograms and VR with the zoo, and she was like, wow. And the small one, 5 years old, really liked the, this Oculus, and they like they really love that. And say, okay, girls, if you want to develop something like that, if you want to do something like that, and you really work in this industry, you need to work with technology and work with, and you like to have like iPhone and computer, so it's really cool. But I can decide because I made a scientific curriculum, like at the first, like, how do you say that, high school, yeah. And finally, I make law. So for myself, I would say why I didn't like learn how to code. But in fact, I know that I was so involved into injustice and everything that I will miss something about what I did, political science, and I think we need to have like this double curriculum with coding or with I don't know, something in engineering and also ethics, political science, because it's so important. When you see how people are using AI now, it's like so powerful what you can do. And they are the real people with the real power, and smart. So, and it will not change if we are not doing something like that. So I'm involved with ISSOPHI and the women, so I'm in a great circle. I will not say the solution, but we have some ideas about parenting, and I think it's really interesting. We need to talk to Emmanuel too. Yeah. And no, it's really a concrete idea, and we need to talk with parents and with the girl with another narrative. And what you say is like, yeah, come to see Vivatech and all these amazing things, robot, and she wants to build some robot to do massages and to do all the clean stuff at home. And I say, yeah, do it. So I will use it.
I did the same with my daughter.
Yeah.
And when we went out of Vivatech, she told me that she wants to live in the future, to have a work linked with the future, not the past. What I say to her is, but what is the past? She said to me, law, accountant, and so on.
You're two are going to have a great conversation this evening. Jean, your experience spans both sides of the Atlantic. I'm sure you've overcome many, many barriers. You are building enablers for the people that you are serving. What would you add to this?
I would say instead of maybe thinking about how, we might see things could have changed, more like lessons we learned as we go forward and think about this ecosystem. Because I think, when you have one force of change or you move the needle, it won't be one factor. It will be multiple things that accumulate and help you get there. What we realize that we really need to work closely in partnerships. So we really position ourselves at the intersection of 3 different sectors. We work heavily with the humanitarian, the NGOs, who help us also in support, finding housing and other types of support that are critical for our students. Because if, for some reason or another, they're not able to find stable shelter, they're not going to be able to come to class. So it's in realizing that it's just not one block, but it's multiple blocks that get someone there, and that you need to work with all your ecosystem partners to realize that you're kind of in it together to bring, it's kind of the, it takes a, village to raise a child phenomenon, but we're working with our students in that aspect. And I would say a second one is even thinking about, not just when a student finds that first job or they get into that first experience, it doesn't end there. It's also thinking about now, when you go into the working world, and so we start, working with a lot of our corporate partners to figure out, what are those nuances, those skills to think about how do I navigate once I'm in the environment, to advocate for myself, to speak up, defend myself, and to stay and thrive in the working world instead of just saying I'm gonna, come in there and, things are not gonna work out necessarily so easily. And so it's thinking about we're taking someone there, but it's a much more complex process, from making sure that they have the right blocks coming together to support them in their training. And then after they've gotten into the workforce, what are the other things and the other tools they need to be able to rely on to be successful?
Thank you. I have one more question for you, but I'm aware that time is starting to run short. So rather than me say that question, I'm going to ask our audience if there are any questions you would like to pose to. Yes, thank you, Nina. That's very quick. Hold off the blocks. Can we get a microphone to Nina just here?
Hi, thanks for the debate. I'm Nina Lamparski. I work for Agence France Presse, but I'm not here really as a journalist. This is a personal interest question. Some of the biggest tech companies have been hit or have been involved in rather large harassment scandals over the last 2 years. And I was wondering whether you felt if that was something that might, how it perhaps damaged the reputation and maybe keeps women or, sort of more diverse, I guess, employers from wanting to join the tech world because they've seen what happens inside these companies, and also whether you felt that the way these scandals were handled, whether that was good enough to kind of address what was going on. Thank you.
Okay, so 2 questions there. One on the impact it's had, and one on satisfaction with the way it was handled once it had happened.
There is one more data you didn't say about the Atomico report, and it was like super shocking to me. It's like 46% of women in tech in Europe say that they have experienced discrimination, and harassment, like in the tech industry. And I think it's like really more than 46%. And the same number really want to leave tech after their first job. So I think it's not a question only about education, how to attract them, because if they come into tech and then have this kind of problem, because it is 90-10%, so it's kind of normal, to have like this kind of, it's like a lot of male and few female. And in the school, you have no female, so they are completely like, ooh, whoa, a woman. It's like, it's really critical, and we need really to change that quickly, because we are losing women in tech today a lot, and there are few at the beginning. So that's really critical today to change that. So it's not good for a company. So what I'm saying to investors is that today, this is a risk for your investment to invest in a company with 3 male founders and with 10 male employees. Because the first woman will come, you can be sure that you will have like some problem, and it's not so cool to be one into like 10 guys with yeah, it's not so cool. So, and it can happen. And it happens to Uber, to 500 startup, to Sophie. It was like the 10th startup the most, with the most valorization in fintech. And it was like amazing. And recently you saw a big corporation, tech corporation have like a big scandal. And finally women decide to stand out and to reveal the email. And it was like, calling some engineer as bitch in a meeting. It was like, phew. And you say, why? It's a big company working every day about diversity, telling that they are doing a lot in diversity. So we have really a huge issue. And that's why with 15 Tech, we are building a SaaS for the big corporation and even startups, really to help them to retain and promote women in tech, and then attract them. But first, retain and promote and work inside the companies to change and to help them to become leaders. And then you can create like some role models that can inspire the new developers, or I don't know, people, even in growth, you know, now you need to, and sales, you need to have like some digital skills, and it's like, I really think we need to change, and it is like really a risk today, and it is an opportunity, economic opportunity. We didn't tell about that, but it's really important to change that. So
We must wrap up. Any final thoughts, Jean, Emmanuel, on this question?
It has. Does it has an impact? Yes, it has an impact, because when you write an article saying that there is sexual harassment in big companies, the first who read the article are not the child, it's the parents. Yeah. So say, okay, you can't go. Why do you want to go in that environment where it's so violent? The second thing is, we've said so much that software developers were rock stars. In fact, no, they are not rock stars, because they are software developers. If they wanted to be rock star, they should have learned to play guitar or battery and whatever, but they are software developers. So we need to, let's say, calm down regarding that. So you have an environment where, yeah, you know what, I'm a rock star because I have a QWERTY computer, so stop it. Regarding the fact that we need girls, it's important. I will take you one example. A few years ago, we took a PhD inside Epitech to work on all the bias induced by the algorithm. And what we discovered is, when you, for example, you do an advertising for a school like Epitech on Facebook, if you are a girl, you will less see that advertisement. So, and we did a lot of stuff with Uber, with your color of skin, with your name, with everything. And believe me, I think next year she will start to produce and to communicate. She went to MIT Code to present what we've been, what she did in Epitech, and it's just crazy. So yes, we need girls, we need white, we need yellow, we need black, we need everyone, because today software is impacting the society at the speed of light. So how can you build a solution without having in your team, without having a team which does represent the society? It's a nonsense. That's why we need to fight to have teams that are the image of the society. Because like that, you can have the point of view, different point of view, and so on, and maybe we may have better solutions. And this is really important. Because the scandals goes at the speed of light in that environment, and we need to fight against that.
Thank you for your rallying call to action. The final word, Jean, is yours.
Yeah, no, I think for me it's kind of to also speak a little bit, I think, to personal experience about it. I think something that happens, and you read a lot of, articles in the Harvard Business Review or things, a lot of reasons for why things happen is, I think, sometimes culture is top down. And when you have leaders who maybe don't think about these because there are not enough diverse people in the room to make those decisions, you end up with policies that trickle down and situations that are very unideal that happen. And so I think there's lots of things that are very interesting out that have been done. They are like diversity bias tests that you can take that, no matter how liberal or how progressive you are, you'll be shocked by the kind of amount of first first instinct responses you have. And I think there's ways to really redefine culture when there are things like that happen. For us, like even within, Konexio, we're a small growing team, but something we've been really conscious about in the beginning is I want to build a team that reflects also in our student population, our community, a diverse world, the world I want to live in. And so what does that mean? I kind of have team members from all around the world who are, a 25-year age gap, who really can contribute. And we really, I think being challenged is one of the best things when you have people who represent these different perspectives that are gonna be brought out in society, because I think that's the only way to really kind of grow and thrive productively.
Thank you, Jean. 3 things I'm taking away from this session, 3 keywords that I've got here: parenting, biases, partnerships. The next session starts in here in a few moments. It is on artistic disruptions. For now, thank you, audience. Thank you very much, Caroline, Jean, Emmanuel.